welcome back from lunch, everybody. Hope it was enjoyable. I went back for seconds. So as we get settled here, we're just going to keep rolling into the next few panels. This afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about Botify Advantage. We're going to talk AI, generative AI. We're going to have a publishers panel. We're going to start dropping some fun facts as we get into some happy hours and some dinners tonight. So just keep it fun, just keep it fresh. I have the pleasure of introducing AJ and Rob to the stage here now. Rob is the CRO over at TuneIn. Fun fact about Rob, he also probably has the coolest cold outbound story I've ever heard, where he sent empty paint cans to 5 executives at a huge company, and 100% success right there. So come talk to that guy. Some great stories. Also, one of the few executives I've ever worked with who can also get his hands dirty at the practitioner level and make some shit happen. So kudos to Rob. AJ, I think I've had like 3 or 4 clients send the nicest notes or gifts to you, and I always look back to my team and I'm like, guys, why aren't they sending you gifts? Like, why is it always AJ? So these guys get it done. Welcome to the stage, Rob and AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll find a clicker for you.
So this is what it would feel like if I had my own talk show. I gotta. Yeah, feels good. Feels good. So yeah, we want to start out a little bit, Rob. Just what is TuneIn, for if you don't know, and what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing? So let's start there. Well, actually, before I start, I'll encourage you guys. I've heard a lot of conversation just walking around talking to customers, and if you're curious about a product that Botify offers, TuneIn, you got them all, right? So
we do.
You're using Speed Workers, Page Workers, Botify Advantage, our new consulting services. So Rob is a very good person to pull aside and ask a question about implementation or how things are going. And I would encourage you guys to do that afterwards. But we'll try to get to some of those today. So tell us a little bit about TuneIn.
Sure. So TuneIn is a 20-year plus company. We are the largest aggregator of radio and spoken word content globally. So we reach around 80 million uniques globally. We're kind of, and this is, we'll get into this later, some of the challenges that we have, but we have apps, so you can listen to most of your local radio stations. We are pretty much power Alexa, so if you ask Alexa for a radio station, probably 9 times out of 10 it's us that will return that station. Google Home, 200 different devices. Tesla, we're the tuner in Tesla, we're the tuner in Rivian, we're the tuner in Lucid, we're the tuner in VinFast. So like, we are kind of the modern tuner, because when you think about it, there's less and less going over terrestrial, regular terrestrial sticks out to cars, and obviously, like Sirius. If you look at Sirius, kind of like we're the global version of Sirius. So
nice. And you just rattled off my 3 favorite automakers. So yeah, Lucid's bringing it. What you're basically you're in the streaming industry, right? And so what kind of challenges are you guys facing right now? What are you up against?
Yeah, so I joined the company like 3 years ago during the pandemic with a new management team, and it was interesting because we have 2 lines of business. We have an ad-supported one, right, with video, display banners, and obviously audio ads, and then we have a premium subscription service, which is you can get commercial-free news, commercial-free music, and play-by-play sports for like baseball, for example. And one of the things we noticed was essentially traffic was going down on the web, and some of this I think was pandemic related in some of those behaviors. And then the other challenge is we had an early mover advantage because we have over 100,000 stations on our site. So if you look, we're usually first, second, or third for a lot of these stations when you search on Google looking for the station. But guess what? Consumer behavior is changing, and now there's voice-activated speakers and everything else. So it's really important that we keep the organic traffic and discoverability on the web as high as humanly possible. When I got here and started asking, like, what's SEO, like who's doing SEO, and to be clear, I'm not an SEO expert at all. That's why I'm so in awe of talking with everybody at like dinner and lunch or whatever, because I'm learning a lot. There was kind of nothing. I had an agency, I don't know what they were doing, but they were suggesting we do like contests with colleges or something, and I was like, okay, this doesn't sound right. And I do a little Googling myself, and I'm like, okay, our Lighthouse scores are not so good. This is scary. They're actually red. So that's like the biggest challenge was we had this kind of tech debt, or whatever you want to call it, of lack of kind of investment in SEO for a long time, and we were kind of riding our own coattails over being here for 20 years, and we had that kind of advantage in front of us. But as we all said, SEO keeps changing every day, so it's a zero-sum game, as I like to say. It's like there's only so much traffic coming through Google, and like, are you going to get the fire hose pointed at you?
Right.
More often than others.
Right. So some of the questions. So let's go through. Give us your Botify stack. So I mentioned you've got it all. So what are you guys utilizing at Botify?
So we started with the Botify platform and Speedworkers. It was interesting. So I pretend to be a programmer on the side, although I'm not really. But I will bring in vendors that I think are interesting and put them in front of engineering. And when I brought Botify in, it was the first vendor I've ever shown to engineering where literally on the call they're like, we should do this. Because normally the answer is, oh, we could build this ourselves. Give me some more budget. And I'm like, okay, like how long is that going to take? And is that real? So that was kind of an easy win there because it just made sense. And then I think we were like one of the first alpha customers for PageWorkers, because one of the challenges we had is before I even got to Botify, we talked to 3 different consulting firms. I had this like 200-page document come back with like thousands of things we have to fix on the website, and I'm like, I don't know what order to do these in. My CEO's asking me, what's the ROI on each one of these things, and like, how do you get this stuff kind of slotted in? And I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know. So when AJ brought PageWorkers, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is kind of like, I'm going to be able to kind of hack on the edges, and a business person can do it, or the Advantage team. I was like, that sounds really exciting because I can rapidly prototype and test things, and then I can go back to engineering and say, now go harden this, go make this reality on the site because I've now proven it, and that's kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when we were talking before the session, you used this phrase I like a new way to work, and that resonates because a couple of things that Adrian mentioned in his presentation to kick us off, that velocity of SEO. Can you get it done yourself without having to run to engineering for everything, right? And so increasingly that's been the problem with SEO is, you in the room, you're responsible for the outcome, but you don't control enough of the narrative to achieve the outcome, right? And so these automation tools put you back in the driver's seat and allow you to do those testing, run out, have a hypothesis. But I like the way you frame it as entirely a new way to work within SEO.
Yeah, look, I'm a big believer in how do you make, there's 10 things you have to do to prove something to be true. There's usually only 1 or 2 things on that list that really prove it to be true. And in general, most companies, most organizations will check off the list on the 8 things that are like easy, like, oh, let's make a marketing document, like let's make a new thing on the website. But like the 2 things, like getting a customer to actually buy it or talk to a customer, somehow gets ignored. So from my perspective, like this allows us to go right to those 1 or 2 things, and then the other stuff's details we can execute later on.
Yeah, and there was a couple folks asking me different things. Well, how hard is it to implement truly with Speedworkers, or how fast can we get moving with PageWorkers? And I'm pretty sure you installed PageWorkers yourself, right?
I did. So it was like around holiday time, and I was trying to get engineering to put the pixel up, and I was getting no answer back. And then I was reading the manual. I'm a big believer in RTFM, the effing manual. So I read the Speedworker manual and said, oh, you can use Google Tag Managers. And I pinged AJ. I'm like, is our GTM set up there? It's not going to break anything? He's like, no, it looks good. So I asked IT. I got access and just read the instructions and put the code in and tested at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't crash the website, and nobody noticed. So it was up and running. So even it's so easy a CRO can do it.
That's better than I always say it's so easy Rob did it.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that kind of augmenting your engineering process. Because I mean, I know with everything you got going on, you mentioned all the different platforms and you're having to optimize for Google in multiple fronts, right? Apple, Siri, Alexa. You got a lot of engineering projects going at once. So how has the tools and the services been able to help in that regard?
Yeah, so a couple different ways. So one is our site definitely is not designed for crawlability, I guess, is the first one. So the nice thing about Speedworkers was it basically allowed us to unpack all this JavaScript, but then we also realized we didn't have a lot of text on page, right? So like I can get humans to go fix that, but like that discoverability part we fixed, and like we saw all the things kind of amp back up again. But then the big thing for me is structured data, right? So structured data is the new orange or whatever. I don't know. It's the new black. The new black. So I really wanted to get structured data up and see how that worked, and especially because we have sporting events, right? And when people go and search, you see that stuff come up in the knowledge boxes or knowledge graphs, whatever they're called. Like, but the stuff shows up, and I want to make sure that our radio play of that baseball game is there for someone to find. So that was an example of like, hey, we could get this plugged in really quickly using PageWorkers, see that it works. Be able to show people, look, like we're now in this knowledge box. This is awesome. How do we make this, permanent? And the funny thing about all of it was then we discovered that the feed that we were sending to Google had all of this data in it already for Google Home. So we just said, well, let's just take that same file and put it on the website. But that you guys made it possible for us to actually test it out.
Yeah, what's been interesting when we talked about that new way to work, the thing that got me excited, frankly, even to myself joining Botify, was these two pieces of technology. Like I said, you many times when I'm talking to you, you know the problem, you know it's broken, you know what you want to do, but you can't do anything about it, right? And sometimes, if you have to be 100% certain before you ship a change, nothing ever changes, right? So if you have to say, if we do this, it's going to be a 10% lift, right? We all have been there, right? You said your CEO was asking the same thing. Okay, of this prioritization list, what am I going to get for each one? Tell me. And you're all going, well, it depends, right? The classic. This arms you with the ability to go, I have a hypothesis. I can implement on our own, right? We can test. I can measure it. And now we're actually alphaing with you the split testing tools that are coming with PageWorkers. So now I can come back and I can say, I am 95.78% confident that this will be a 12% lift, which is nice, right? It's a nice way to change the dynamic entirely and speak to that C-suite in a language that they understand about a topic that they obviously don't know, but they understand that language. And
exactly.
So yeah.
And look, I think the other thing too is there was a lot of just broken windows that we had to clean up. So like our canonicals, I'm still not certain exactly what that means, but like I know they were not
it's a fun
good.
Word to
I know
say
they
at
were
parties.
not good,
Yeah.
but we got those fixed. And then another example was like under podcast, for some reason, and this is kind of like, that's what I find interesting is you guys span both pieces, right? It's like the hardcore technical piece of how SEO works and making sure the bot sees everything and the speed is there. And then you have the qualitative, like, language, discoverability. So for podcast, you guys were looking at it like, hey, nobody uses the word on demand for podcast, I think was the...
Right.
So we're like, let's change that. So we changed that, and sure enough, the click-through rates went up, stuff started performing better, more traffic. So it's been really great because it's both pieces. But in my opinion, you got to start with the machines first, because that's like the highest scalable thing you can do, and then you can start working on all the other stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What's cool too is like in you guys, to dote on you a little bit, are a great client because you're so willing to experiment and try new things and go out on that edge. It's been really nice, and then we have the tools with PageWorkers. Like when we were first looking, like you go to schema.org, there's a schema for everything, right? So there is schema for radio. No one's really using it. I went and looked. I looked at all the radio stations. No one's actually using it, but TuneIn is now. But there's no real, if we do this, this is how Google will react, right? So it's not going to be, that's not supported in the rich testing tool. So what do you have to do? You have to go implement, test, measure, and come back. But we've been able to get some really interesting, augmented SERP results for things like March Madness, for things like baseball games, events. But it took a lot of tries. So if we had gone to engineering and we said, it's this, use this structured data just like that, it probably dies because the first,
no one would listen to me after like one
right.
or two of those.
The third time it didn't work, right?
Yep.
You're like,
Rob doesn't know what he's talking about. Don't
right.
listen to him anymore.
And so we were able to rapidly test. What if we did it this way on a cohort of 100 radio stations? Let's look at this for 1,000. Let's look at this for Major League Baseball. How is Google responding? Then we ship winners to engineering. So instead of going back, another issue we run into as SEO is you're forced to ship beliefs to engineering. I believe strongly that this will be positive. So coming back and going, no, look, and we literally had the screenshots, right? Like, this is how the result will now look if we were to implement this, and here's the scale we'll get, and we think it will increase click-through rate by X, right? And so that, for me, is refreshing on this side of the table because it does, you mentioned like the 200-point list that you get, right? And that's, that's the client experience. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but that's also people in the room's experience, not having the tool to be able to execute the thing you want to test.
Yeah, and look, the other challenge that we have, right, is we're a radio app. So a lot of the times the stuff we have to test and do, I get a little more leeway as long as I don't let the UX people find out about it. But people are looking for, 80% of our traffic are people looking for specific radio stations, right? So SEO really is important. So if someone's coming in, the likelihood of the person, like if you look up 1037 in New York, the likelihood of you going to that page, deep linking in through the website, into the app, download the app, and then being like, oh, before I click play, I'm going to read all the text on the page to determine if I want to click play. Like you already know the brand, right? So a lot of the conversations earlier today when we talked about like brand equity and brand awareness, like these stations all have brand awareness. So most of the stuff I'm doing is more of like, how do I get the search engine to rank us as high as possible? So when the person's going for that specific brand, we're like, maybe we can get to 1, but likelihood it'll be the radio station site itself, but I want to be number 2 or number 3. Especially after whoever said that today, like you're screwed if you're past 6. So
yeah, right.
So we have to, that's going to be another push.
Yeah. Third is the new 10th. Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's an interesting, like strategically, and I've run into this in my career with a few clients. Like, many of you will have that. You want to take number 1, and you can take number 1. TuneIn's in an interesting, I call it like a slipstreaming strategy. You're never going to, I don't want to break this to you, but you're never going to rank number 1 for ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is going to rank number 1 for ESPN radios, right? So you have this challenge where you're slipstreaming, you're drafting like a race car off the lead car in front of you, right? And that actually over time can create brand by showing, oh, well, TuneIn's everywhere that I'm going. I can just go there. But it's also presented some interesting opportunities where you have that drafting strategy, that slipstream strategy off the known brands and the radio stations, but then discoverability opportunities where someone may not, what is the best, rock station in the United States? And the fact that I can listen to that without having it, picking up from the tower, it gives that little bit of nudge towards discoverability that you're speaking about.
Yeah, and that's been some of the testing we've done actually, which has been exciting, is how do we get the genre-specific segments more discoverable, right? Because, like, again, it's going to be very hard for us to be number 1 against the actual brand itself or the station itself. But if someone says, "What's the best classic rock station?" or "What's the best country station?"
What is the best classic rock?
I've got a my personal opinion is the Power Loon out of northern Minnesota. And then we someone knows it?
Charlie's a fan.
He knows what I'm talking about. I actually bought a T-shirt. Overpriced T-shirt, but no, I would say the Power Loom. But then, look at country. We just launched the Big 615. So Garth Brooks and Stormy Warren left Sirius, and they've come to us. So that's been a huge push of how do we get that ranked as high as possible, because you have this audience that was at Sirius that really liked Stormy, and you see it in the tweets. If you think about it, I think Bob Pittman said it in a podcast. It's like the morning talk show host or whatever, the person, the on-air talent, they have to be your best friend, because like it's literally like if you were driving in the car with them sitting next to you on your commute, right? And if they're annoying, you throw them out the car. So you have to like be likable. So people have a great affinity for their talent. So for us, getting discoverability of like the big 615 live as quickly as possible, again, is like another. That's where PageWorkers helped.
Yeah, absolutely. At the risk, I'll ask a dangerous question here. So, the Advantage team that I run is awesome in my opinion, but I want to hear your opinion. Like, it's a new service. A lot of you are asking, like, what is that? How is that different than this? What's been the experience so far? What are you hearing from the team? Give me, at the risk of that hopefully not being too much of a commercial, but Rob's a pretty straight shooter, so you'll take it.
No, look, I think the feedback's been great. I'm going to try to barter some free audio time in South Korea to get you cloned. But no, it's been really good. Super knowledgeable. Get straight to the point, and then the nice part is you can help implement it in the tool, right? Because it's one of those things where PageWorkers is a great tool, but again, like I always go back to like how much of your day job do you spend on something, and if it's a complex thing or requires a little bit of like knowledge, if you're like, all right, PageWorkers, I'm going to own PageWorkers, and I only have like an hour a week to work on it, like there's like little nuances of like how to use it and get the DOM location right and all this stuff that I had to kind of figure out, and I'm going to screw it up because I'm not doing it like all day long. So that's the nice thing, is the team's able to say, hey, here's the strategies, here's what we should do, and oh, by the way, we'll do it for you, because we can do it 10 times faster with like no error, where like if I did it, I shouldn't be doing it, but if I did it, like it would more than likely not be correct first out of the gate.
You actually did do it, and you did do it correct. I will say, so when we first got it in, he was like, hey, I want to install it, and I'm like, yeah, it should be easy, it's pretty easy. We say it's easy, it looks easy. He installed it right away, and then I go in, and I was like, guys, he's already done like 12 optimizations.
No canonicals. That was just structured data. But yes. But yeah.
So just to give you like an idea, I looked at TuneIn yesterday. Right now we have live 100 experiments that we're running right now. And so at any given, and some of them are small, so not everyone is like this grandiose thing. But that's what we're talking about, that new way to work. Like, we're testing constantly. At any given moment, we should have at least 10 good SEO experiments running. And now that we have the split testing tool, we don't have to do it carte blanche across the board. We can come back with that statistical evidence. And again, what are we shipping? We're not shipping beliefs. We're shipping winners to engineering. I know for a fact this change will produce a win, and here's how we did it. And the cool thing is while we're waiting for Eng to fix it, it's live. It is, for all intents and purposes, fixed, right? So we get the immediacy, that velocity that Adrian mentioned. We get that right out of the gate, and then engineering doesn't have to have it. It's not a fire drill for them, right? They can get to it in their sprint in order. But that's been the greatest thing about working with TuneIn, is just the ability to have that many experiments running at once and get back to the creative part of SEO, not the okay, hreflang, fix it, canonic, fix, but like, you guys are creative thinkers. You're most of you are Swiss Army knives, right? You have more to offer and bring to the table. This allows you to get back to the fun stuff. Let's imagine some new stuff and test. So it's been really, the cool thing to see and see that blossom for TuneIn.
Well, I mean, look, I think, and I'm not an SEO by trade, but I think the cool thing from my standpoint is like, it's this massive fire hose of traffic, right? And how do you make it testable? Like I've done direct response advertising for most of my life. Like that, you can change creatives, you can do all kinds of stuff, and it's like immediate feedback loops. And SEO is always that thing where it was like, these are the best practices, and like they're all very logical, but then there's like the college level 200 and 300 and 400, and how do you actually test that stuff with velocity as a marketer when every time you have to go to engineering to do a lot of this stuff? So that's kind of where it was exciting for me. And to be honest, when we looked at Botify, we also looked at Rebel Mouse, and they're like a whole CMS that's optimized for SEO. And I was like, okay, we got to re-platform. And I was like, wait a second, this thing you just plug into the CDN and do this, and then it just works. So that was like an easy decision, to make happen. So
Well, cool. I think we're coming up on time. I don't know if we're doing QA, but I think do we have a question from the audience or no? Or check on there. I'll buy us 20 seconds. But yeah, I wanted to, you can kind of see Rob is a straight shooter. When he's walking around, if you have a question about a product, you ask him. He'll give you the rundown, the skinny, and I think you'll find that really, really valuable feedback if you're trying to decide, as we were in the cab today, should I do speed workers? Yeah. So I think,
although I will trade feedback for any like SEO tricks and tips that I don't know about. So yeah, I can run those tests.
He'll give you feedback
I don't know SEO
techniques.
really that well, so
yeah. Okay, so we're good to go. Thank you, Rob. That was really great.
Thank you, AJ. Thanks, everyone.